30 seconds. 20 seconds. 10 seconds.
'Hi,
My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Nyesha McCauley, and
Well,
you're watching AccessTV.org.
All right, my friends, once again, it's time to get our talk on. This morning talk with me, your host, J. Stan McCauley, along with the champions of talk, Jay Hogarth in the background, the incomparable Jay Hogarth. In Studio 1A, none other than the one and only Christopher Dukes. Brother Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. Blessed, highly favored.
Pull your mic up.
Yes, sir.
There you go. There
we
you go.
are.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Doing very well. Feeling great these days, which is just good. Relief. Yes, sir.
Are you ready for the heat wave?
Always. I'm as ready as I can be. I have a couple of baseball games to go to over the couple of games. My son's in the Little League All-Star, and some of these games are expected to be in 99-degree weather, and so all you can do as a parent, on top of having good conduct, try to stay cool as well as you can without getting arrested, you know? You can only take but so much off, you know?
Absolutely. I was going to go into a long diatribe of how every year, you know, you think summer was being invented for the first time,
Right.
and winter and all of that, but I'll skip over that. Mr. Christopher Dukes is here today as part 2 of a special that we're doing on justice, American justice, and does it work? Will it work? And can you make it through the system? It's sort of like going through, Navy SEAL training. You know, the best of the best are chosen, but then, a handful out of the best make it through because they put you through so much. You know, you're innocent until proven guilty, supposedly, in this country, and then they come after you, and they do everything possible to seemingly find a way to make you guilty as opposed to defend your innocence. And you, along with another person, have set out to create an organization, the American Justice Project, and help people maintain their innocence when falsely accused.
Yeah, and I would say, Stan, it is, I think, the best way I can say, with the amount of funding that our government has, local government, federal government, there should never be a need to have an American Justice Project. We, as American citizens, should be able to sit back and watch in awe as our government works on behalf of the people.
Wow.
Go ahead.
No. It's something you said hit me like a ton of bricks. The American judicial system should be the American Justice Project.
Yes.
There shouldn't have to be a.
There shouldn't have to be. And when we created this nonprofit, this wasn't for us to be in business for 30 years, so forth. Really, it is to identify a problem, and the goal of this nonprofit is to put ourselves out of business by taking care of or accomplishing the mission that we're set out to do. So we do know our mission is clear, and it is applicable across multiple agencies, not just state agencies, private agencies as well. And so there is, and I hope we will get into a deeper dive into these elements of the chokehold and how they work. We do not have to speak theoretically. And so we have cases, actual cases that have gone through the system that confirm beyond a shadow of a doubt that the chokehold is in play. Thinking about some of the things you said earlier about the presumption of innocence. The presumption of innocence only applies. The presumption of innocence is outweighed by the bias, the various forms of bias that are living within the individuals who are occupying the seats designed to carry out justice. And so what I say by that is there's actually an internal bias. And if that internal bias is, say, not there, there's a programmatic bias in the policies and the practices of them from someone who designed them back then, who had that internal bias. This disease is similar to the same disease that killed Emmett Till, the same disease that killed Alton Sterling, Eric Gardner, Breonna Taylor. You know, all of these killed Martin Luther King Jr., killed John F. Kennedy. All right, so this is there, and we still have a situation where the truth is kept from the American public. That's why people are in a great state of confusion. Last week, part one, we started talking about the Supreme Court victory that was achieved by my union on my behalf, but it's just not me. What we must understand is what the Supreme Court ruling did was set the record straight about just how biased this system is that an innocent black man can have false accusations made at the lowest level of the judicial system, which is at the law enforcement level, at the patrolman, and it can work its way across all branches of government. I mean, through the politicians. I made sure that every politician who had skin in the game on this particular case knew about it. And to stand back and watch, will any of these people be who they say they are on their campaign ads, or will they turn around and do whatever they can to protect the power structure that perhaps put them in office and keeps them in office? That makes a David and Goliath situation out of every accusation that comes forward. We, the people, or the accused individual, is David, and you're fighting a Goliath that has been building and growing, and it's well funded and it's well protected by various agencies that comprise of the power structure. And that what they do is they use the chokehold. They don't even know they're using the chokehold. So which is why one of our primary missions for AJP is to elevate the work of Paul Butler, Professor Paul Butler, who wrote the book Chokehold: Policing Black Men in America. I believe that's the right title, but it is the chokehold. All right. And what AJP, American Justice Project, has done is identified 16 elements of the chokehold that apply across multiple agencies, and we have found a mechanism for performing an analysis to determine, did the chokehold exist in this case? Did it exist in this case? One thing I can tell you, the chokehold has existed in every single wrongful conviction case that we know of, and those that we don't know of.
You said a couple of things. You identified the disease. You said there's a disease. Is bias the disease, or what is that disease?
Yep.
That
Bias is a symptom
okay.
of the disease. And with the disease come certain things. So, for example, if I have a disease that's preventing me from walking on my right leg, the next symptom of that will be you're going to hop. Okay. You're going to hobble. You're going to do something. You're still going to get around. You're still going to move. There, with this disease, fear is another symptom of it. Fear is a natural, and we've talked about using natural feelings. It's okay for people to feel fear, but fear can be misplaced. So can trust. Right? The American public trusts that our agencies are doing what they're supposed to do, and that trust is contingent upon their life experience on how those agencies has performed. We do know that the relationship between law enforcement and the black community has been estranged since day one for a lot of reasons. It's because not all of us have the positive experience that if you are pulled over, say because a taillight is off, that you have the most professional officer come to your door, explain to you why they pulled you over, tell you what the remedy can be, and even if they have to write an infraction, that they do so, and they treat you with the same care as they would want to be treated themselves. And you just had a professional law enforcement encounter. That is not the reality for a lot of people. Correction. Not everybody, because there are a number of people that experience something completely different. You have an officer who is approaching you for a rear tail light that's out. The hand is on the firearm. There's abusive language that is coming towards the individual, and now the individual is acting more out of fear. They're thinking, hey, I know I have a taillight out. I didn't get a chance to get it fixed yet. But then they know, wait a minute, who are you talking to? Why are you talking to me like I'm a child? Why are you screaming at me like I just robbed a bank? Why are you using profanity towards me and I'm not using profanity towards you? So part of this disease also is, and I'll put on the lens of the patrolman, and I can do this. I worked very closely with a lot of police officers over the years. I did a lot of ride-alongs, and I got to get their perspective on what they think when they go on the road, that this car stop could end my career, could end my life. And therefore, I have to be on my A game to make sure that I walk away safe, that person walks away safe, and I get home to my family that's safe. Who can't get behind that? I support that our officers are going out, doing their job, and that they can go back home to their families safe at night. I'm not against that at all. What I'm against is what that officer does to take that person who had a broken taillight out, to take that person away from their family. That's not law enforcement. All right. So what we need to rise up again is look at this disease. And I know I didn't give you the best example of this disease, but I just gave you a couple of symptoms of it. When I see a body cam video and I can hear the officer saying, "Get down, get the F down, get F. Like, wait a minute. That's not in training. You're on a whole nother level. If you can't control you don't have enough self-control to speak and give orderly commands in a fashion that doesn't dehumanize the individual you're talking to. Because not everybody does well with someone screaming at them and MFing and all this. Get down, you dirtbag. And dirtbag? I'm an American citizen. When did it become okay? Dirtbag, scumbag. Come on, folks.
Well, see, you said something that I was thinking about, which of course is training. Because you think of highly trained individuals, like federal agents, Secret Service, where people are, highly trained, and training takes time, takes energy, takes money. And you see a steady decline in. Well, let me rephrase that. You see more of a normalization of this kind of behavior that you're talking about, where that almost is now the expected norm. I don't know whether it's because of television, societal changes, but there are major changes. I wrote down a couple of things that you had mentioned, and You mentioned your situation, your story, to several people, running for office, in an effort to, see what their reaction is going to be, which caused me to, so elected officials, but are our elected representatives working for us, or are they working for the system? You had mentioned, protecting the system. Right. So, is the system there to control the American people, or do the American people have a system that benefits them? Because it doesn't seem that they do. It seems like in every situation, and you mentioned the chokehold goes beyond just law enforcement. Right. It's become a tool that's used by elements of the system within the society to control the masses, or quote unquote the people.
Right. If I may respond to that, is if we were playing roulette and we can put all our chips on black or red, black being we have an elected system or politicians who work for us, versus on red, they work for the power structure, maintaining power and maintaining control over us through various things. If I had $10 million, I would put all of my chips on red based on what I've seen. When I tell you the conversations had with Congressman John Larson's office, Edwin Vargas, Douglas McCauley, Brandon McGee when he was still in office. I think Johanna Hayes is the only one who can somewhat escape this conversation. Rosa DeLauro, Senator Murphy, Senator Blumenthal, Lieutenant Governor Bicewicz. I had multiple conversations with her. Ned Lamont and I never spoke directly about it, but his aides were spoken to. I have written correspondence from John Larson's office confirming that they had shared this plight with the governor's office and on down. We're talking about the CSCU Board of Regents. We're talking about the president of the CSCU. We're talking about the president of Central Connecticut State University. Every official who had the authority to fix this situation in year one knew about it, did something about it. Let me go back to Mayor Bronin, knew about it. Mayor Arulampalam knows about it now. Who else might think of? Chief Jason Thody. It started before him, but before he became interim chief, I made sure he knew about it, and he's known about this the entire time. Members of his command staff have known about this. Again, I keep making written records to these folks so that when the time comes, they can't deny they didn't know about this.
Right.
I've spoken before the Supreme Court or a couple of justices at our former and current chief state attorney's office. The current state attorney at in Hartford. Again, I can go on and on with all of these people within the power system who could have fixed this without it rising to the level of going to the state Supreme Court. And they chose not to. They consciously chose not to. One of the ways that they help maintain the narrative is by controlling the media, what the public knows about it. The other way they do it, they control the record. What gets on the actual court records? We use court records as proof of, see, this was said in court. See, this was said in the Internal Affairs Review. See, this was said in the Civilian Police Review Board. They control all of that. So unless you sit down and get the resident, the constituents side of the story, it's different. So what I was trying to do with my own case, pump the brakes, folks. All you've seen, if you look at every record, you'll see everything about what the accusations were. If you go back to a couple of weeks ago, the Hartford Courant, the slant that they put on this Supreme Court victory was, again, that this monstrous black man did these things, not was accused of these things, did these things. And the Supreme Court is overlooking it and forcing his employer to take him back to work. So our Supreme Court, the highest court, is actually capable of taking a man who has beaten his wife, strangled her, kidnapped her, bound her up with duct tape, kept police at an armed standoff for hours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this man deserves to go back to work. That is ridiculous. And this is the kind of fraud that gets perpetrated on the American population daily.
Mm-hmm.
That is it. So when we break down this chokehold thing, we see, whereas not one of these articles, with the exception of the Hartford News, again, Ann Goshagin, thank you for being the one person, besides Cornell Lewis and Reggie Hales with the Inquirer, the one person to put out information about the DNA testing that proved that I was completely innocent. That's just one. That's the highest level of evidence you can get. Forensically tested evidence that showed the only person who could have possibly handled, correction, not possibly, did handle that duct tape was my accuser. She's the only one with DNA on both sides of the tape, and I am eliminated on all 4 sides of those 2 strips of duct tape, with the exception somebody tried to get my DNA on there, which is why the state forensic lab was only able to identify a partial DNA, not a complete DNA profile. You put one finger on an item, your DNA, your full DNA profile is there. That shows I didn't even have a finger on it. So how did my DNA get on there is the question. Now, this is a roll of duct tape that I personally handled.
Right, duct tape.
2 weeks before. Duct tape that I handled 2 weeks
Sticky.
before.
Duct tape sticky.
Right? And from the time I put that roll down, I left my entire DNA profile around the outside of that strip. What happened to that strip is what I've been asking. Hartford Police don't want to know. The state attorney's office don't want to know. And they work together to allow the statute of limitations to run out so that the accuser can escape justice. That's the kind of work. And when I was telling even like the Alliance, the African American Alliance, that folks, this is not an individual case. This goes beyond Christopher Dukes. If we have the highest level of law enforcement, that being the state attorney's office, our Hartford Police, the arresting agents, our state police, who really weren't involved in this at all, and our FBI out of New Haven, they've all seen this DNA evidence. They've all seen the 18,000 phone records confirming that this accuser was involved in an extramarital affair, including calls happening during the time she alleged she was beaten and bound with duct tape. All of these agencies know that, but still maintain the chokehold on me. And the last element of the chokehold that they have on me now involve my children. Still having me separated from my children in a reduced fashion is absurd to anyone, especially since the type of father I was before this all happened. And remember, what the part they don't tell you is that when a SWAT team came to our house, coming down based on the false accusations that this accuser made, I went into daddy mode. I protected my children. I called police. I worked on de-escalation. I had 10 phone calls with them. 9 of those phone calls were never preserved or recorded by the Hartford Police Department. I don't know if they were, I bet they were recorded. I can't prove that they were recorded, but you recorded the first one. Why would you not? In 2018, at that time in law enforcement, you would want to record everything. Why would you not have? Not only did they not record it audio-wise, they never wrote any reports about what was said during those 9 phone calls. I preserved it because I needed to tell people what was going on with that. I preserved the record. They don't even show the record that they called me or I called them any of those times. They don't want people to know who I was during that night. They want you to think that the crazy black man was drunk, violent, the one that we've been telling you since birth that you need to fear. He's one of them.
So they craft a narrative that portrays you in a way that they want you to be betrayed, and then they build everything around that. But the Supreme Court of the state of Connecticut has vindicated
Yes. But they too were very careful in their wording. They didn't come right out and said this man was set up. This man was lied upon. Evidence was planted on this man. Police filed. We found that the police lied on their reports. We find that they didn't do that. The Chief Justice supervises all the prosecutors, all the judges, everyone under the division of the judicial division is supervised by the chief. I find it very ironic that he announced his retirement a week before this decision came out. I'm not surprised.
Right.
And I said, listen, I don't blame him. He didn't do this. And he's a phenomenal trainer, unbiased. I've watched some of his bias training that he gives to them. Oh, how I wish his people followed that, because we wouldn't be here.
Right.
All right. So I wish Chief Justice Robinson well in his retirement. I wish he did stand around and finish, because there are judges, the number of family court judges who've had their hands on this case, the number of superior court judges at the civil trial and Connecticut trial, or Connecticut level, criminal level, and just the number of lawyers who've been paid tens of thousands of dollars on this case. Yet and still, there's only one that really comes to mind as was a true warrior and trying to get the truth out. That this man was in his house on a phone call with his mother, reporting that his wife at the time was having an affair, and that upset her to the degree that she went outside and made this false 911 call. This woman did not look like a person who got dragged up and down 76 stairs, punched by a 350-pound husband, strangled by a neck by a 350-pound husband, 6 feet tall, right? So, big, massive man caused no damage. Needed no Kleenex, no ice pack, no Band-Aid, no nothing. Anybody. If she had done that to me, I would have needed medical care or so forth. So again, this is all about shaping the narrative. So if we can, we'll go through these elements.
Absolutely.
This, by the 911 call, it was guilt by accusation. Guilt by accusation is the first element of the chokehold. They're not all in numerical order, but we use them based on frequency, the most common. According to Marco Jakian, who used to be the former CSCU president, when I won the arbitration back in 2020, his comment was still in disbelief because his mind was convinced that I was this monster. And his word to the public was, all you got to do is listen to that 911 call. Listen to that victim on a 911 call. And I remember back in the day when we watched cartoons, and when somebody would do something so foolish, they would change the face to a picture of a donkey and had a sign say jackass across it, right?
Yes.
Marco Jakian should wear that mask permanently. Because what you just revealed to the public, that the CSCU system believed that I was guilty the moment they heard the 911 call. Forget about DNA evidence. Forget about medical evidence. Forget about toxicology. No, they believed up front. And then the institutions went on spending tens of thousands of taxpayer dollars on campaigns across campuses with signs that says, believe her.
Oh, wow.
Now, again, you couldn't find, next to myself, we have a director of a women's center at CCSU, and there are other colleagues on other campuses. We all together were like the Justice League for women's rights. We wanted to make sure that no one's rights trumped anyone else's. So I was out there as a champion for women's rights. Women on CCSU's campus knew that. Women across the country knew that, because they knew that I was going to investigate a case. I was going to get to the bottom of it. And if someone is committing domestic violence, sexual assault, whatever crime it was upon that individual, regardless of their gender, I was going to address it in a very fair manner and take care of it. I was never going to sweep it under the rug. So this campaign, in essence, when it says believe her, you might as well flip it around the side. It says don't believe him. And that's not right. I can't imagine any mother of a son and a daughter who would want the son to have a different experience in the process than the daughter did simply because of his gender. So the universities are oblivious to what they are actually doing, what they're indoctrinating in people. They are cementing the chokehold through their own campaigns. So before someone's accused. So then after someone is assumed guilty by accusation, then comes overcharging. So again, I'll go back to my case. Here I am completely innocent, but I was presumed guilty. And because I was presumed guilty, here comes the fleet of charges. Those charges is what leads to excessive bail. Excessive bail. My bail was $750,000.
Wow.
Remember what the purpose of bail is for, is to ensure the individual will appear in court. It should not be to make sure you break the bank so they can't defend themselves against you.
Right.
It should not be to choke out their finances to where they can't pay child support and then we can arrest them that way. It should not be to, again, to prevent defense or to drive someone mad. How are we going to pay for this and so forth? And then you drive them into the suicide chair. Okay? That's another reason why, again, AJP is very important, and we want to work with counselors throughout the state, defense attorneys, prosecutors. We want to work with everybody to alleviate the strain that comes through the chokehold. Now, let's say someone is able to make bail. Luckily for me, I took advice from a lot of people and started a 401k. I was able to retrieve money from a 401k, repay one of my sisters who was able to put up the bond immediately and repay her and pay others who are, and hire a private attorney to do the work. The police misconduct, which is another element of the chokehold that's there, that already happened. It happened the moment after I was out of the house. Someone contributed DNA on that duct tape, and no one wants to take responsibility for it. No one wants to test the officers to say, all right, hey, who touched this? Again, Henry Lee, despite the press that he's received over the last year for a mistake or errors, whatever that you want to call it, that he made, this man is still one of the very best to have ever done it. I was very honored to be a student of his back in 2003. He taught me, treat every case like a murder case. That way, it's the most serious case. You're going to apply the most serious approach to this, and then you're going to clear and sift through and find all the evidences there. The police in this case have DNA on that. And how do we know? No one else was in the house. No one else. The only people who could contribute DNA on that duct tape was myself, my now ex-wife, or whoever collected it. And when you make a mistake and you collect it, you are supposed to report, by accident, I touched this without gloves, therefore, that accounts for any contamination.
Right.
These officers did not do this. So again, I'm not condemning the entire Hartford Police Department. However, the cover-up belongs where it is.
Right.
They began covering this thing up the moment they learned who they were dealing with. I am not a thug. I am not uneducated. I know my rights. And when we talk about constitutional rights, the first constitutional right that they kept dinging, and creating fear is about gun ownership. I'm a legal gun owner, right? I'm allowed to possess firearms. I went through the process of becoming a gun owner. I became a gun owner in 2001. Nobody had a problem with me owning or possessing a firearm until 2018. And again, the slant they put onto it, he refused to unload his firearm. The question is, when, at what time in the timeline did I lose my constitutional right to bear arms inside my home?
As an innocent individual.
As an innocent individual.
Right.
And the argument could be they didn't know that, but they knew because everything that I own was legally purchased. It's all in their system. They knew what house they were coming to. They knew what I did have. There were only 2 firearms that were unregistered because I didn't purchase them. These 2 belonged to my late father-in-law, who was a Hackensack police officer. And when he retired, these firearms were still in the home, and there was a concern that the children may get access to them. They were not properly stored or so forth. I'm the one that has a license. I'm the one who has a proper way of storing them. They were given to me to hold on. But again, the media, he had 2 unregistered. You know, the slant that's put on there. Folks, if you don't know me by now, and everybody who knew me before knew, this is not Chris. This is not the profile. So again, the way they start to inject you with it, with this disease that we talk about, is they get you by changing your identity. You no longer become, and I appreciate last week when you allowed me to be humanized and tell people who I am. For folks who didn't know me, you would think that the first thing you knew of, oh, this is a guy who defies law. This is the guy who doesn't believe in that he'll put his whole neighborhood in danger. This is a guy who, despite having a high-profile job, this guy's a monster. He's angry. He's yelling at police. He beats women. He does all the... See, that's the narrative. They created an entire persona based on the accusations. That's what we must stop doing. Continue on. It's all about pretrial detention. That's another issue. I was only detained for 3 days. I will never, and I said, I will never be in someone's cell ever again. There is no way that is happening because the trauma still lives with me. So when I think about our brothers and sisters who spent years and decades in jail, I have no idea how they did it because I still feel the strain from going through the process. And one other element we talk about is I posted my bond. And after posting bond, you're supposed to go home, right? They didn't let me go home. They sent me to the county jail where I still had to be strip searched, still had to be isolated, still had to go through the entire process, the dehumanizing process that they do to every inmate that goes through the process. I got a new number. All those things had to happen. Now, I tell you, as I said before, with my faith, this all was necessary. So that when God's deliverance comes through, to God be the glory.
Amen.
Not Chris Dukes.
Amen.
All I had to do was be the vessel. And because I know without a shadow of doubt how much my God loves me, I love God enough to be able to walk through this fire, be called everything from a narcissist, sociopath, a wife beater, called all that stuff that does not apply to me, and just let it slip off because the Supreme Court knows who I am. Right? The Supreme Court knows there was no way they could sell it and continue the injustice. That's why they took an extra 400 days. Because they didn't know how to spin it. Otherwise, they could have made this decision the very day we had oral arguments. There was no new evidence to come in. We already had 2 DNA tests, 18,000 phone records. We had all... The arbitrator did such a phenomenal job. They couldn't believe that the system bucked back and said, we're going to reject this righteous decision. Why? I don't know why. I can't answer it, and I don't want to take time to really speculate. But I'm sure it had a lot to do with my gender, my race, and so forth. All they saw in the report is the narrative of who they said I was. And this is what I tell other folks. Be who you are, not who they say you are. Unless what they say you are is who you are. You really are, you know? Then you do that. So a couple other ones. We talked about media manipulation. I asked folks, please look at the Hartford Courant's rendition of the Supreme Court article, and then go look at the Hartford News' coverage. You would think they're talking about 2 completely different cases. The financial abuse. At one point, I was over $400,000 in debt fighting this system. We talk about David Goliath. Most people wouldn't be able to find the resources or have... I didn't find the resources. They came because there were other people who were moved to say, this is not right. And I'm going to use my blessings to bless Chris and his children so they can stay together and he can pay child support. He can keep a roof over his head. And I'm going to do it. These were not handouts, you know, because you get people that will criticize that also. I've had lawyers say, well, why don't you go out and find a job? I have a job. And I had a job before your client falsified being kidnapped and so forth. Your client caused this. But everything was all, you caused this, you did this. But as of today, 6 years removed from it, there's not one piece of evidence that supports strangulation, kidnapping, and the like. If you go to the AJP's website and the Justice for Dukes campaign, you will find my interview with Hartford Police Department. It was all on body camera, where I presented 33 exhibits supporting my innocence and confirming that my accuser attempted to murder me and my children that night for her own benefit, her own financial gain, and so that she could be free and pursue a life with the individual with whom she is still with right now. Never left. And how the family court gave this individual, protected this individual. First, the criminal court protected her because they refused to arrest her. They said, despite me presenting all of that evidence, that's irrefutable. Because if any of it was false, they would have arrested me for false statement.
Right.
And I challenged them to do so. So to hear the Hartford Police Major Crimes Unit say, Mr. Dukes, there's no evidence that there's no probable cause that you lied. I said, thank you. Now, can you go tell the public? You know, but the public can see it, the fact that I'm not in handcuffs. Same thing at the state police. Same thing at the FBI. There's no probable cause that I've lied about anything. So therefore, why haven't you arrested this individual? And to have the same prosecutor who wanted to see me swinging from a tree.
Right.
That same prosecutor took that complaint I made to Hartford Police, made it disappear, and added a supplemental report. This was a 2021 case. Put a supplemental report under the 2018 case that was already dead and dismissed in court. That's how they hid it. And then that same prosecutor now went and destroyed the remaining duct tape that I was asking for since the charges were dropped, so that we can continue more testing. That prosecutor and the judge on that case executed an order without my consent, without consulting my attorney, to destroy it. And Hartford Police gladly did so. So there's that cover up. But we already still have the DNA profiles on the record. So we know it's there. So again, in concept again, the state of Connecticut's law enforcement community thought it would be better to arm me with all the ammunition and firearms that I owned, but to keep me disarmed from that last remaining $2.83 worth of duct tape.
Well, see, that last remaining $2.83 worth of duct tape is the truth.
Exactly.
And the truth points back at them as being culpable.
And they have the official statement from the state attorney's office of Hartford that they will not arrest this woman unless she comes in and confesses. So how are we doing on time, Sam?
Well, it would appear that we've run out of time.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I knew we were getting there.
But that's okay, because this is something that you can't, reduce down to a 3-minute soundbite.
Yes.
For the evening news, which is why we're here, because the story needs to be told, and so we take the time to tell the story.
And
in the end, it'll all be right there.
Yes, and it's not. Again, my story is just one case.
Yes.
This is happening. Man, 3,500 exonerations since 2089. All right. And every one of those cases had elements of the chokehold in here. The Central Park 5, we did an analysis of them. The Central Park 5 at age 15 for those folks had 15-point chokeholds.
Wow.
On them.
Wow.
So,
and there's 16.
There's 16. I had 15 of the 16. Sean Ellis, Trial 4 on Netflix. Sean Ellis had 14 of these. The only one I didn't have was wrongful exoneration. So therefore, not wrongful conviction, which means I will never be considered an exoneree because I was never convicted. My case, through the work like I'm still doing with AJP right now, pre-trial investigation, my case was dropped pre-trial once the state was confronted with their own corruption and the evidence supporting the truth.
Wow. All right, so we will have you come back. All right. I actually, he's going to come back like 4 times. So he's been here twice. This is part 2. of 4. So we're gonna have part 3, and then part 4 we're gonna have a special guest host come in, and we'll wrap this all up. So it's fascinating and intriguing, and I hope that it's allowing people to see the system. And I think I don't know why. I guess we've been indoctrinated as a culture just to automatically have blind faith in the justice system, but it is a system that is run by human beings, and it is just as susceptible to human frailties and corruption as the other systems. And if you don't hold all of these systems accountable, they'll just go, they'll stop being as functional in a beneficial way as they can be. And we're the constituents.
That's right.
As I like to say, it's our government. It's not their government. It's our government, and it is all here to serve the American people. That's why I won't give up I'm an American.
Right.
Because when you give up, you're an American and a constituent with a constitution and rules. Well, if you give up that right, then they can treat you any way they want, because they're going to treat you any way they want already.
Yes.
But you have to push back and don't let them defeat you.
That's right. And think about this last statement. The president of Central Connecticut State University has cost taxpayers millions in investigations, wrongful termination awards, and so forth. And yet and still, there's no accountability. That person is allowed to be there and leave on her own terms when she's good and ready. Whereas if any of us had cost any institution millions of dollars, one, we would hopefully have the honor and dignity to resign and not have to be forced out. And so my message to my alma mater, Central Connecticut State University, and President Zumotoro is to once in your term as president, do the honorable thing and resign. Because come trial in September on this whistleblower retaliation lawsuit that I have filed, the truth about the sexual misconduct cases that you yourself have been covering up are coming to light. Respect our community and bow out gracefully. Thank you.
All right. My friends, we'll see you next week, or the next time that we can schedule to have Brother Chris come in, and we'll continue with part 3 of 4. All right. Stick and stay. We'll be back with Cleo for our morning talk. This has been our morning talk special. We'll see you real soon. All right. You all have a great rest of your day.